to this edition of the Everyday Editor. My name is John Crossman. Thanks for watching. Today I'm going to talk about another natural characteristic of a good editor, and that's spatial intelligence. I did a lot of education videos over the years, and a lot of these characteristics could also be called intelligences: musical intelligence, logical intelligence, and this one's spatial intelligence, which is the understanding of how objects in a scene are related to each other. If you're just doing straightforward news or documentary editing, there isn't a tremendous amount of spatial work needed, but the time that you see it most often is in an interview situation. In an interview situation, you know that the audience is the observer, okay? So that they're in the room, even though they're not obviously in the room, but they're in the room and they have a position in relation to the person being interviewed and the person asking the questions. Very often you'll see in an interview situation that a person is looking off camera, so that places the person they're talking to this side of the camera. So if the person is the camera, is the observer in the room, if they were to look at the other person, they would turn the camera this way, and that person would be coming back over the camera this way, the opposite way of the way I'm going across the camera. It's very popular at the moment to cut away to someone that's totally not looking the right way, and it is jarring. I personally don't want to mistake jarring for being a good storytelling technique. If you're telling a story and you want to jar the audience, well, again, if it's logical and it's motivated, then that's fine. But if I'm just having a conversation with someone and all of a sudden the cutaway has them facing some totally unexpected angle, my first thought is, why are they looking over there? In the meantime, I've lost whatever it was they were saying. And so as an editor, I never want to make an edit that's going to take the viewer's attention away from what is being said. And that would go for music video if they're playing music or they're singing lyrics, or, in a movie, if action is cut without the correct spatial interpretation, the audience starts to get confused because they know that they're the observer in the room. And so if someone's on this side, then the other person is going to be on that side. And if, in news, even the editors would joke about it because there are a lot of interviews and news stories. And there would always be we didn't shoot stories with two cameras. And so once the interview was done, the photographer would turn the camera around, in the same place, but turn the camera around and point it towards the reporter. And they'd go, okay, give me a cutaway. And they go, and knock their head and nod their head, or maybe they, make some subtle reaction that could be cut in to the interview to cover an edit. So if I'm talking and all of a sudden I'm talking here and then I'm talking there, that's also distracting. And in the split second that your mind is going, what are they jumping in the frame for, you've lost whatever it is they were talking about. And so that's why we use cutaways. And that's why the cutaways have to be in that same spatial relationship with the camera or the audience being the observer. They know where they are in the room. If you use an unexpected angle in a cutaway, now you've really kind of taken the intimacy of them being in the room away from the viewer. Another reason why I don't think it's a good technique. Television, movies a little less so, but television especially is a very personal medium. They do use close-ups in movies, but not as much as they're used in television, because television is a smaller screen. And, they know people are watching it in their living room, and so if they really want to draw attention to a character, they will use a tight shot. And it's intimate with the audience. And when you break that spatial relationship, the proper spatial relationship, then you break that intimacy with the audience. And so I personally don't think it's a very effective thing. Yes, it is jarring, but if the subject matter isn't interesting enough to keep the viewer engaged, well, then you've got a bigger problem. And all the jarring cuts in the world aren't going to make the message any clearer if the message isn't engaging to begin with. You're talking about people dying in an accident or being thrown out of a burning building or getting hit by a train. Using the wrong spatial placement of the cutaway just takes away from what the real story is. And so, as an editor, I'm always there to support the story, the message, the communication to the audience, and not to show how cool I can edit something to distract you with. So, that's spatial intelligence. You can study documentaries and newscasts and even, dramatic shows on TV and see how they keep that spatial ratio correct in scenes. And if they need to flip the camera over or the observer needs to change their place in the room, they most likely will go to a wide shot. And that kind of resets the shot so that now if they need to flip the spatial relationship, they're not doing it back to back with the previous spatial relationship. So, things to watch that you can pick up from professional editors. But a spatial intelligence, I think, is a good attribute to have. I'm John Crossman. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.